The GWS Giants have started their 2025 campaign in style, smashing the Magpies by 52 points at home and potentially have exposed a fatal flaw in the way that the Pies want to play in 2025 and probably exposed a few players in the front half of the ground for Collingwood. So we're going to unpack that in this game. It sort of all comes back to one major statistic that we've sort of talked about in the preseason, and it was really prolific on show again today for the Magpies. The Giants were absolutely imperious today, and I think one of the biggest headlines coming out of this game will be around Finn Callahan and his emergence as one of the best midfielders in the competition. There was no Tom Green today, so Finn Callahan had to do it all. And he was absolutely outstanding today. His dynamism coming out of stoppage, his meters gained, the way that he just penetrated the ball inside forward 50. He gave the Giants really dangerous looks consistently. His ball use was amazing as well. So he was crazily good, and as was Sam Taylor, who I think if you join those two together, they are the main reason the Giants won this game. Taylor's ability to win the ball back off the opposition, turn advantageous situations for Collingwood into advantageous situations for the Giants was a big part of why they won this game. If you actually look at the game, just from an overall statistical point of view, it kind of looks like Collingwood in some ways were the better team. And I think that's a reason for that is the fact that Kieran Briggs went down early in the game, which gave Collingwood a huge ruck advantage through Darcy Cameron. If we swivel down here to the hitouts, 23 to 47 in favour of Collingwood, which gave them +4 in the clearances. But that's a little bit of a false positive, I would say. Just when you looked at the overall quality of the clearances, Collingwood weren't really able to have the same sort of cut through that the Giants were when they won. They weren't able to generate scores from those clearances, which is ultimately what you want when you are winning the clearances. So a big advantage in hitouts didn't lead to a big advantage in clearances, a small advantage in clearances, but then Collingwood weren't able to take advantage of that. And if you go one step further to the inside 50s and the territory game, Collingwood only won that stat by one with that amount of ruck dominance. So they weren't really able to take advantage of that asset that they have. And overall, it really came down to, I think that the Giants, from a midfield perspective, and you can include the high half forwards in that as well, they were just able to be a lot more clinical with ball in hand. If I bring up some of these midfielders, I talked about Finn Callahan off the top. I mean, he was just amazing. 33 disposals today. So he was an accumulator. He had 730 meters gained. So he was constantly a player that was involved in bringing the ball forward. If he wasn't able to generate a score, they were able to lock that ball inside forward 50 or create some sort of an opportunity. I think that the biggest stat for Finn Callahan today is his 12 score involvements, which was the best on ground. He had the most amount of clearances on the ground. He had the highest meters gained. He had the most disposals. He pretty much was everything. If you look at the ranking points, he had 6 ranking points higher than anyone else. So he was just the man today. And even those other players that just rotated through the midfield or played as a high half forward, Brent Daniels had, going through the list here, Brent Daniels had 6 score involvements. Toby Green had 11 score involvements. Toby Bedford had 9 score involvements, and he was the one playing on Dacos as a defensive midfielder. Dacos just wasn't able to get any time and space with the pressure that Bedford was putting on him. And it's probably now like a bit of a conversation with Dacos around the fact that he played that amazing season in 2023 off half back where he's able to get that extra time and space. He can use the ball, he can use his elite foot skills, but when he's got someone perfectly to match up on him like a Toby Bedford who has that faster feet, he has that sort of explosive step where he can go with Dacos for the first few steps. Dacos can't get away from him, and then he can't use his ball use to hit targets inside forward 50. And I think that really showed today. And the Giants were just able to take advantage of that. You look at the rest of the players in Collingwood's midfield, it's Harry Perryman, who was actually really good today. I think he tried really hard. He had big tackle numbers, big disposal numbers, and he was probably their biggest threat as a midfielder. But then it starts to fall away and you start to bring those older statesmen into it. Still Sidebottom comes in, Pendlebury comes in, and they're probably just not having the cut through and not giving enough of an outlet for Dacos as well. But the players that I really want to focus on for Collingwood, and perhaps the reason that they weren't on the same level as the Giants today, are really those high half forwards, and making that comparison between the high half forwards of the Giants and the high half forwards of Collingwood. I mentioned some of those score involvement numbers for Toby Green, for Bedford, Darcy Jones, Brent Daniels, those players that start forward and ultimately the ones that are making that final disposal inside forward 50 to make that connection with either your key position forwards or your deeper forwards. And they got on top in that area. And I look at the Collingwood players, Bo McCreary, I look at Lucky Schultz, and there's just not enough quality there on the ball overall. Looking through their numbers, you had, Bobby Hill had 6 score involvements as a bit of a deeper forward. Jamie Elliott had 6 as a deeper forward. McCreary had 5. Lockie Schultz then has 4. So you're starting to go down to pretty low numbers. And when you're also not applying pressure, because I think that was a big part of what the Giants did so well with these high half forwards and packing out the midfield. They were able to put all that pressure on the elite users for Collingwood, even off half back, get in their face and make sure that they were just kicking long and high. And that's why Sam Taylor in this game was able to have 12 intercept possessions, 9 intercept marks. He was unbelievable. I'm just going to bring that up for you to actually visualize intercept possessions there. 12 for Sam Taylor, including 4 contested marks, second on the day. And where are those intercept marks? Have I lost that statistic? Oh, no, there it is. Yeah, so Sam Taylor, 9 intercept marks for the game as well, 5 more than Darcy Moore, who was the next best. So that starts with that pressure around the ball, and it's the high forwards that come out to put the pressure on the ball carrier by packing out that midfield zone. And are McCreary and Schultz and those sorts of level players, even Ed Allen into that for a part. He plays a little bit of midfield and plays a little bit as a high forward or even a winger at times as well. So is the quality in that area as good as a team like the Giants or the Lions or the Cats or some of these top teams? I think that's going to be the question for Collingwood. And I think when Dan Houston comes back into the team, we'll get to have a little bit of a better look at that. That's one more best 23 player into the side. It's a good ball user. It takes a bit of pressure off the likes of Josh Dacos and these sorts of players. But they need to be able to hit those targets inside forward 50 because their key position forwards are not enough of a presence. They're not enough of a needle mover compared to other teams that they're just going to be able to crash packs and dominate. Like McStay today, he looked pretty average up against Taylor can do that to players, but Taylor was able to be too dominant in the air. And because of the pressure that the Giants put on Collingwood's ball users, there was too many high kicks to McStay and he just got beaten in the air. Mychek was pretty good. He had a couple of goals for the game. Membry, I thought, had a bit of a dirty day. He was giving away some free kicks and just looked a little bit below the level at the moment. So it was an interesting game. I thought this does, everything for the Giants and their premiership credentials. I just think that team looks so balanced from back to front. I only really talked about Sam Taylor, but, Iden was really good back there. Buckley was really good. They've still got their ball movers like Whitfield and Ash. And Stone comes into the team and he played really well. I mentioned the midfielders. They only get Toby Green coming back into the team. They get Jake Stringer coming back into the team as well. So there's still a lot of quality. Hogan comes back into the team. So there's plenty of players and there's plenty of depth there to come through. And I think they can make it work with Kelly and Cornelio and these depth midfielders to be even stronger. For Collingwood, you still look at the list on paper, and I do think overall it's good enough, but it might be just a bit of a magnet moving and deploying. Can Dacos come up and play a little bit of half forward and be a little bit closer to goal when he's kicking the ball, just to try to free him up a bit? Maybe it's to break a tag. He goes a little bit wider. He starts at half back, and then he's kind of the one doing that final disposal because that's where it's breaking down with these poor, deep, dirty entries.